Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bear Experiment podcast. I'm here today with one of my dearest all-time friends, Danny Vaisman. Welcome
Hello.
to the show, Danny.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time today to speak with me a little bit about your life and basically the idea of today's podcast is Danny's been in this town for a big part of the exponential growth that's been happening in Miami. You got here in 1959?
1959.
1959 from Peru, and we'll give a little bit of a backstory on that. But he was a big investor in Miami Beach, and I had a house in Palm Island, and really foresaw the growth that's happening in Little Havana, which is where we're at right now, Little Havana, Miami. So we want to dive a little bit into how crazy Miami, right? What Miami has turned into. Like every celebrity in the world is here today.
Yeah, Miami has exploded in the last 4.5 years. A little bit before COVID, but COVID made it really explode where you could leave New York or Chicago, work online in a nice place, in a heavenly place like Miami, and not have to put up with the traffic and the cold and all the other stuff,
Right.
and the crime and all the other things that go on in other cities.
I guess that's a good point because real estate really did take that explosion. Really, it was after COVID. That's exactly
Yeah.
what it was because everybody was just coming over here. It wasn't just because of the cold weather. It was all the other
factors and the fact that
economical factors that were happening
Yeah.
in those areas.
and Florida is a free state.
Right, correct. Yes. So a little bit of background on Danny Vaisman. So he got to Miami from Peru, where he was born in 1959. His father was Austrian. No, that's interesting. What the hell was your father doing in Peru?
That's a long story. My grandfather went to Peru.
From Russia?
From Russia 100 years ago. He left Russia in 1919, went to Austria, married my grandmother, Austrian. My father was born there. And then he went to Peru 100 years ago. And my father and my grandmother followed a few years after my grandfather had gotten to Peru. My father grew up in Peru, and then he came to the U.S., and he went to MIT. He finished MIT, his master's degree in 1944 at the age of 22. Super smart guy.
What was his major?
Mechanical engineering.
How long have I known you? I don't think I ever knew that your grandfather went to MIT. Your father. Your father went to MIT.
Father went to MIT, finished his master's degree.
So what did your grandfather do
1944.
in Russia?
My grandfather in Russia was in the White Tsar's army in the First World War. After that, he left, and he had businesses in Peru, import-export.
So that's
and
how he
real
ends
estate.
up getting over there then after.
Well,
Okay.
he went to an Italian port to get a ship to the U.S., and the U.S. was very restrictive about immigration at the time that he went, and he ended up going to Peru. Then he brought his wife and son to Peru. My father grew up in Peru, and as I mentioned, went to MIT and finished his master's degree at the age of 22. Then he went to Peru to be with his father, my grandfather, and they worked together. And my father went to New York for my grandfather's import-export business and met my mother in New York. My mother's American.
Okay.
They went back to Peru. My brother and I were born there. And in 1959, when all this stuff was happening in Cuba, my mother decided to leave Peru thinking that what happened in Cuba could happen in Peru.
It was a big possibility that it can happen there.
Right. And we came to Miami Beach, where I grew up on Alton Road, and went to North Beach Elementary, Nautilus, and Miami Beach High.
Right, because communism starts knocking on the door there aggressively with Fidel in 58, 59.
A little bit after that,
Okay.
when you had the generals come in and take over.
Right, where they really took over the country. Okay, so you come to Miami in 1959. When you're here, and you're growing up here, you decide to what's your idea behind going to Boston then, university, to get your accounting degree?
Well, it was a good school. I wanted to study business. I went to Boston University, finished there, finished a Dutch program as well called Nyenrode in Holland, 1971, 1972. I met my wife in Paris in 1971, now my former wife. And I enjoyed Holland, and I studied for international business, which I used throughout my life.
Right.
When I finished Boston University, I went to work for Price Waterhouse, the accounting firm. I didn't care for it too much. It didn't work out for me. I left there and I went back to Europe to be with my then girlfriend, after that my wife, and took some courses in French and applied to American International Group, the insurance company.
Okay, but let's rewind a little bit before we get to that. When you're in Boston University, you're in the rowing team.
I was a coxswain, varsity coxswain for the rowing team, something that I still carry very much in my heart. And many years later, in 1981, I coached the rowing team in Holland, who went to Milan, Italy, and won 2 gold medals and a silver medal in the World Student Games. I was really proud of that, of course. That was a great accomplishment. But I also coached in Miami. I coached at the Big Five Club, and cool. I had a boat called Los Pichones.
Oh, that's awesome.
They were very, the younger group, but I had been trained in Boston with a lot of discipline, and this boat did very well and won the state championship, I think in 1975.
Okay.
At Disney World, as a matter of fact.
That's funny. That's great. So you end up getting your accounting degree from Boston University, and how do you end up getting to Europe again? Because you come here, you're here for 6 months, you hate it, and you end up leaving to Europe, which you've always very much identified there.
Yeah, I speak Dutch, of course, because I studied in Holland. When I came back, I called up American International Group, who had told me to come for an interview, and it didn't happen. And I said, I want to talk to the president of the company. They said, okay. They go, who's calling? I go, Danny Vaisman.
And how old are you?
24 years old.
No fear, ever.
Maybe
and if you did, you hit it well. You've
23 or 24. So I talked to the president of the company. I go, look, my name is Danny Vaisman. You told me you're going to give me an interview in Holland. I never got one. What's the deal? The life division of AIG, biggest company in the world at that time, or one of the largest companies, not the biggest one. And the guy says, well, hold on a second. I'll put you through the accounting department. And I get hired by the controller of the company.
Amazing.
So I drive from Miami with my then girlfriend, later wife, to Wilmington, Delaware, in an old Porsche with a bunch of pots and pans in the front seat and back seat, whatever we could get into the car. Drove through. It was a beautiful drive. The car was functioning. Stayed in some really funky truck stops on the way up because I didn't know any different. And we got to Delaware, and I went to work for AIG. Their life division was called American Life Insurance Company. And I'm there a couple weeks, and I get called into the office of the president of the company. And I go, wow, I guess they're going to fire me. I guess
I'm out.
I'm out. I'm done. I'm finished.
I'm done.
I go up there, and the guy was from, Kentucky. And he goes, hi, Dan, come on in. So I go in. He says, I see from your resume you've traveled a lot. I go, yes, sir. He says, you ever been in Africa? I said, no, sir. He says, where you going? Go see the personnel department, and you're going to go to the doctor and get 977
1,027 shots in order to get into Africa.
Absolutely. So I go, yellow fever, hepatitis. I mean, I get all these shots. And off I go to Africa.
So you go alone, or you go with...
I go alone, and I leave my girlfriend not married yet.
You're not married yet.
Attending college in Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay.
I go to Africa.
So you guys are living together in Delaware.
We're living together
She
in
starts
Delaware.
going to college over there,
Right.
and they ask you to go to Africa to
Correct.
work there. Was there a length of time that they told you that you were going to be there for?
Well, I was going to be there for a shorter time, but as it turns out, when I got to Africa, I got along super well with the locals, and they came to see me. They said, "You don't understand. These people really like you. We'll pay you whatever you want to stay here another few
Well, but
months."
I think that's the dynamic that you pretty much have with anybody that you meet, right? Like
Thank
that's
you.
just something that you have. You're
Yeah,
very
I-
charismatic. You're just very international with your approach with everybody, and everybody just feels very comfortable with you. So how long are you there in total then?
So I'm in Africa at first in the fall of 1975, and they go back to New York and get your visa renewed. It's a 3-month visa. And I said, I can go to Holland and get it renewed because I have a lot of contacts in Holland. They go, okay, go to Holland. So I go to Holland over Christmas holidays. And one morning, my father-in-law, former father-in-law, was leaving to a meeting in Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. And a limousine was waiting for him. He had a very high position in Heineken. He was going to Democratic Republic of Congo to negotiate in Kinshasa. And we're at the breakfast table. My former wife, my former father-in-law, and former mother-in-law, and I ask, "I'd like to marry your daughter." And my father-in-law says, "That's fine. When's the wedding?"
Okay.
He takes off, and then I fly back to Nigeria. We had a couple of weeks in Holland. Very nice. Very nice. And I go back to Africa. I'm in Africa, and they have a coup d'etat. They assassinate Murtala Mohammed, head of state, February 17, 1976. I'm in Africa. I'm walking in the street. My driver disappears. And lots of tension, lots of armed forces, lots of grenades, a coup and a counter coup in the same day. And I'm walking along a fence to the American embassy, and at a certain point I look down, and there was an entire battalion of soldiers pointing their rifles at the street.
Jesus.
They could have shot at my feet. I never saw them. They were in camouflage. I got to the American embassy. I knocked on the door. I said, "They're having a coup d'etat. I'd like to come in." And the guy says, "We have not officially recognized the coup or the counter coup. I can't let you in." But the guy
Jesus.
was a Tex-Mex who I'd played basketball with.
So he recognized
yeah, he
knew
goes,
you.
"Danny, ¿qué quieres?" I go, "Man, are you kidding me? Lo que
Right.
quiero, I want to
Like,
come in, man."
I don't want to die.
They let me in, and I meet there my boss, who was a really, really amazing guy. He had been in the Vietnam War as a captain, and he was now stationed in Nigeria, and he had gone to the American embassy to report to the headquarters in New York that the company might be nationalized because of the coup d'etat that was taking place. Anyways, we hung out a while and then went to IBM to get the tapes. At that time, it was a question of tapes and things. And I had a lot of other very, very interesting experiences in Africa. The people liked me, and they made me an honorary chief.
Really?
That was amazing. And I hired a bunch of people that I kept in touch with for the next 20, 25 years for different positions in the accounting department and the auditing department. When I came back from Africa in April of 1976, I got ready for my wedding, June of 76. And I got married in Holland. It was a very nice wedding. Not too many people attended. But
Did you have a lot of family members that attend on your end?
On my end, only my mom, pretty much. My mom and her girlfriends came. My wife's side, of course,
Yeah.
everybody was there. And it was a really nice wedding, small but nice. And then we stayed in Delaware for another year, basically. And in 1978, year and a half maybe, I got transferred to Madrid, Spain. I went to Madrid, Spain, did what I had to do there.
So at this point, your wife travels with you to Madrid?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We go live in Madrid for about 2 years. Right after Franco died. So It was a real changing time in Madrid. But Madrid was wonderful. It was a great city, no crime, no anything. My position was financial director for an amazing company, so that was great. And somewhere along the line, I got invited to apply for a position in the Netherlands again because I speak Dutch and Spanish, and they needed someone to manage Latin America who could speak Spanish and report back to the board in Dutch.
Right.
That was me. That was 1980. So we drove one of these amazing drives like Miami, Wilmington, Delaware. This was Madrid, Rotterdam, the Netherlands. All through France, staying in amazing places, some good, some bad. And I went home one day. We lived in Delft, Holland. One day going home from work, I saw a rowing oar with a booth in the square from the college kids recruiting rowers. Typical, they always recruit rowers. And I went up to the tent. I go, "Hi, my name's Danny. I used to be a coxswain in Boston. If you ever need a coach, call me.
So that's how you get started.
I'll be delighted to help you coach a little bit. I live in that house." And I pointed to the house. One dark and rainy night, two guys show up at my door. They knock on the door. I open the door. They're both like 6'5". And they go, "Hi, you Danny?" I go, "Yeah, can we talk to you?" I go, "Sure." They come in. They go, "We need a rowing coach." I go, "I can do that." So I coached them. And there's amazing articles in the Dutch papers. They ended up calling it the Danny Vaisman 8.
Oh, that's amazing.
And they won that year so many medals that they got invited to the World Games in Milan, Italy. But what I said to them the first day, I said, "Look, if you guys row really well, I will make sure that we go to row in the Head of the Charles in Boston in the United States." And of course, their comments were like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah, right, Danny. Come on.
Exactly. Anyways, they rowed very well the whole year, and they rowed in the Student World Games in Italy, won 2 gold medals and a silver medal. And yes, October of 1981, I took them to row in the Head of the Charles in Boston, and we slept in the boathouse. That was amazing. That was one of the amazing things. During the time that I was with that company in Amsterdam and Rotterdam, I traveled a lot to Latin America with them. Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Curacao, Suriname, Panama. Panama was always one of my favorite places because they have great music. And the electricity is 110, not 220, so that's a big difference too. I don't know how relative it is today, but in 40, 50 years ago, it was a big deal to have normal current, normal electric crap on your electrical appliances. Not as many as what we have today. Yeah, so that was all pretty neat. And in working in Holland, I went to the World Championships of Rowing in Switzerland. Rodezee, a beautiful place to row. We went to watch and observe. We didn't participate in that race. And then I got called by a company in Miami if I was interested in I was doing reinsurance at the time. Not insurance, but reinsurance, which is insurance of insurance companies. And I had trained in London, at Lloyd's of London, with a couple amazing courses with the Chartered Institute of Insurance. What I remember is a guy giving a lesson and saying, the most important thing about reinsurance is utmost good faith. I never forgot that. I was in Royal Tunbridge Wells in England, and the guy was explaining proportional and non-proportional reinsurance. It was pretty amazing time to take those courses. I took some more in London later. And this company in Miami, actually in Boca Raton, which was a subsidiary of Armco Steel, was Armco Reinsurance, which was a company that would do reinsurance risks. I got hired by them to be a vice president for Latin America. I was 32 years old, I think. 32 years old. I came back to Miami and worked for them for a year. During the time that I was working for him, in about the fall of 1983, I was invited to the reinsurance conference in San Francisco, the Hemispheric Conference of Reinsurance. And the president of the company told me, look, you're the vice president of production. Rent the biggest room you can at the Fairmont in San Francisco and order tons of food. I can do that.
I think I can handle that.
Right? So I went there with my wife, and when everybody left the cocktail, they left all the crab claws and all the shrimp and all the roast beef. It was great at the Fairmont. Beautiful view of the city and so forth. Anyway, came back to Miami, and the guy said to me, look, we want to transfer you up to headquarters in Ohio. And that's when I said, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm done.
I'm good.
Thank you for bringing me back to the States.
D-U-N, done.
Thank you for bringing me back to the U.S. with my stuff. I'm finished. So I go home. It's about January of 1984. And I say to my then wife, I don't know what I'm going to do. They're going to lay me off because I'm not going to Ohio. And the answer was, well, you better do something. I'm pregnant.
Oh, boy.
Talk about motivation.
Talk about the pressure is on.
The pressure is on. So I took my MG Midget with amazing little car. That was my car. I didn't have any other car. I had a company car, but I wasn't going to keep it. It was a Buick Skylark. Forget that. So I kept my MG Midget. And I started doing some reinsurance, and a guy says...
So where'd you put the baby in that car?
No baby yet. No baby yet. Baby later had both kids in the MG Midget. But, so I went to see a friend of mine. He goes, have you ever considered, like being an insurance agent? I go, no, I've always done, more reinsurance than sales. He goes, well, you know a lot of people in Miami. Try it. I go, well, maybe. He says, look, I have an empty office. In my office, you can sit there and try it out. So I started the Insurance Workshop, which was an amazing company. And I took it from 0.0 to about 15 million in sales and sold it to, many years later, to Arthur J. Gallagher, publicly traded New York company, $50 billion company, market cap. So that was pretty interesting. That was a lot of fun.
So you open up your own company, the Insurance Workshop, and this was in 1983.
84.
84? Okay, so tell us a little bit about that.
February of 84.
Very successful. You did very well.
At the beginning of the company, of course, no money, no nothing. MG Midget. It cost me like $1,000 at that time, imagine. $1,400 it cost me. Anyways, we didn't even own a typewriter at that point in time. So I would come home at night and do the applications by hand. Long time ago, right? I mean, we're talking 40 years ago.
So what source of income do you have coming in? None at all. It's whatever savings you had.
It was a very tight time.
And you have a baby. You have a wife.
Baby was born in August. Yeah, I mean, things were ridiculous. I would bring an application home, fill it in, go collect a check, take it immediately to the company, and try to get the $20 commission check so we could eat that week. It was a tough time.
And how long were you like that for? Throughout that beginning growth?
Well, I was in that was 1984. And one day in 1985, beginning 1985, I get a call from like a $50 million building. And I had nothing to lose.
So they call you?
They called me.
And how did they hear about you?
They hear about me because
this is the interesting part. Because obviously you were you're a very social person. You say hello to everybody. You're very intelligent. You've made a name for yourself. And part of it is because of your social networking circle that you've always maintained. So how did you leverage that relationship where they felt comfortable enough to call you and not the competition?
I had called someone, and what happened was they had a broker on their account for many years. And the broker would do things which I never did, which was like, wait till the day before the insurance expired, bring you the proposal. You had no choice.
Gotcha. Right.
So I get a call.
Dirty tricks.
You know, the day before you're going to expire in a $50 million condo, you got to take whatever the guy offers.
Right.
So this guy felt, someone had told him, look, there's a guy named Danny Vaisman. He's kind of new, but he's got a great insurance background, worked for AIG, worked for a subsidiary of Marsh McLennan. The guy knows what he's doing. Marsh McLennan being a large broker that owned the broker ended up buying the broker in Holland for which I worked for, which was also a big broker.
Okay.
They go, look, this guy's got a great background. Maybe you can give him a chance, because the other guy's going to come in the day before, like always. So I did the best I possibly could. I mean, I did everything I could, and I go in, and I present the contract, and I really, those points in life where you have absolutely nothing to lose. Nothing. So I go in there, I put the proposal on the table, the guy looks at it, I don't know what anybody else is bidding, I'm doing the best I can, and I go, this was like, talk about putting things out of your butt, this was it. I go, sir, excuse me, this is the best offer you're going to get. And if you want to bind it, all I need is a $50,000 check to bind it. And the guy looked at me and said, what? I said, this is the best offer you're going to get. And if you want to bind it, I need a $50,000 check before I walk out of here to bind it. The guy said, wait a minute. He walked out of the room. He came back. And he handed me a $50,000.
And you were like, holy shit.
I had never seen so much money in my life.
That's amazing.
So I put the check in my pocket and walked out like, of course.
Awesome.
But with a $50,000 check, I requested an agent of record letter, which gave me the right to pick up everybody else's quotes. And I placed it. After that, I got a call from another huge building. $30 million.
Also through reference, right? Now, at this point, now you're working.
Now the guy that had bound the building with me with a $50,000 deposit, premium was much more, told some of the other condo managers on Brickell, hey,
now you're word of mouth based on somebody that's already working with you.
So I get called into another building. And it's a very ironic story, really. I get called to another building, and the guy calls me in, and I was a bit naive in the sense that I didn't know what was required because I was new. And the guy says, again, I tell him, look, I can do your building, I can do it. And the guy says to me, can you get me like parking, the valet parking insurance for autos? I go, yeah, of course. What the guy didn't tell me was that a few weeks before, a Porsche had run into like 4 Mercedes in the parking, and they had this incredibly large claim pending. But the guy never told me. So I go into the marketplace as a broker to try to find coverage, and I find a guy that'll do it. This is an amazing story. This was a huge premium. It was bigger than the first one. And I go, wow, I got a child. I got responsibility. I better get this account. And I drive in the middle of the night to Fort Lauderdale to the guy's house, the underwriter that can give me the coverage, and I knock on his door at
what time?
10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. I had to push start the MG to get there. And the guy says, oh, Dan, yeah, what do you need? It's, 11 o'clock at night. I go, I need a binder. Because the guy told me if I brought him a binder, he'd give me an agent a record letter to pick up all the other quotes. And the guy says, a binder. It's 11 o'clock at night. Well, all right, let's go to my office.
Nice guy.
No, he was going to make a lot of money on it, too.
Right.
We go to his office. The guy gives me a binder. I come back the next day. I show up with a binder. I pick up the account. And I'm like crazy. I just got 2 huge accounts. Those 2 accounts at that point in time represented 70% of my income. That was it. Those 2 accounts. The next year, I lost one of them.
Okay.
Which goes to show you can't have all your eggs in one basket. But by this time, I was getting
Isn't that the truth, though, right? That's like the rule of sales 101.
Can't have
Don't put all your eggs in one
you have,
basket.
you have 50 clients, you're a success. You have one client, they own you.
Yeah, correct.
Anyways, as time went on, I picked up some other buildings, and I started picking up all the nightclubs on South Beach.
But let me backtrack a little bit. So you have these two large accounts that are representing the bulk of your of your income that's coming in to support your family. Do you start kind of like relaxing a little bit at this point, not working as hard because you're feeling a little comfortable, the money's
not
coming
at
in,
all.
or are you still like an animal, just
No,
attacking everything?
Worse. You got 2 accounts. Can I get 4? Can I get 6? Can I get 8? It eats you up.
Yeah.
Which I did. I ended up insuring, in the course of my business, Fisher Island, $1.5 million a year.
Okay, so we'll get into
You
that.
know,
We'll get into that. We'll get into that. Definitely, you have to give the backstory on that 100% because you outbid everybody for that piece of business.
That was an amazing story too. Anyway, backing up. So I have 2 accounts, big accounts. And I start picking up like an apartment house in Miami Beach, another apartment house. I have a guy.
So what was your strategy then for targeting these accounts that you were going after?
Well, I would go to 957 cocktail parties a night.
Events. So that's always always kind of been your philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, I would go into I became a member of the Roofers Association because roofing insurance liability was impossible to get. I figured, well, if I can do 1 roofer, I can do 2 roofers, maybe I get more. I had more roofers than the Roofing Association. Nightclubs, I thought that's a difficult classes of business that I thought were difficult. I started getting things like, no one's going to remember about this, but I started getting all these nightclubs on South Beach and picking up hotels and picking up buildings, and it started snowballing a little bit. I would go to the real estate meetings. I was the only insurance guy that would go to the real estate meetings. I would go to the Roofers Association. I would go to the Port of Miami. I became president of the Propeller Club for the Port of Miami. I insured the park in the Port of Miami. I mean, I just networked every day.
So how was the environment in that time in the 80s where it was, the Mariel coming in and the Colombians and the drug wars that were happening here? What was your experience with that within a business where you're having to insure a lot of these local businesses that are owned by these cartels?
Well, one of the stories I remember in the nightclub business, there were a lot of convicted felons, and a lot of convicted felons from New York that came here because Miami Beach was booming at the time. So we'd go in to meet a guy, and I have some great stories about that. And you'd say to the guy like, listen, I need a deposit and I need you to sign a finance contract for the premium. The president of the company needs to sign the finance contract. And the guy would say, no problem. And then you'd hear like, honey, you need to sign a contract. All these guys' wives own everything because these guys were convicted felons.
Right. They couldn't do anything under their names.
They couldn't do it in their own names. So their wives were presidents of the corporation. And I ended up, insuring a lot of these nightclubs. Of course, I would go once in a great while at 1 in the morning just to see what it was about.
So that was my question. That was my next question, and you beat me to it. Did you ever have that personal experience where you were in there and you were kind of mingling amongst these high profile kind of drug dealers back in the day where there's so many movies that are bringing
that time in South Beach coming up with all the new bonds that we floated and all the new hotels being done and the nightclubs. I would go once in a while at night. I had past my time of going out till 3 in the morning, but I would go to see what the business was about. I was a very responsible insurance person, and I would go to see. But most of the time, I'd go in the morning, at 9 in the morning to pick up my check.
Right.
That's what it was about. I was very much focused on what I was doing. Yes, I'd go once in a while, but I didn't go and drink and party.
Yeah, for the party scene. You were there for business.
I wouldn't even drink. I'd just go in to observe, look at the emergency exits. I mean, stuff like that, which sounds silly, but that was my job. That was my responsibility. I have some great stories. one particular club. I went in to see the owner, and definitely, no question about it, was mafia. I walk into
What was the name of the
back.
club? What was the name of the club? Do you remember?
No, I can't do that.
Come on, Sharon, give us the juice.
No. I go into the back to see the guy, like, yeah, and the guy's Italian.
So the guy's sitting in the back. Does he have like a mob of security bodyguard security guards around him?
When I walk
with
in,
the guns.
No, but it's like I walk in, I go, "Hi, I'm Danny, the insurance guy." I go, "Oh, he's waiting for you. Go in the back." So I go in the back and I meet Giancarlo or whatever, right?
Were you scared?
No, because I was too stupid to be scared. I was there to pick up a check. So I go in.
The naiveness of being young and stupid.
Oh, yeah, wonderful. So I go in.
No, and you're like a gringo, right? You're like El Gringo. El Gringo's here.
I go into the back, and I tell the guy, I need you to sign the contract, and I need a deposit of $4,000. And the guy turns around, opens up a safe, and pulls out 3 wads of bills. I mean, big wads of bills. Hands them to me. And remember I had a Pierre Cardin suit on, and I'm putting the bills inside my jacket.
You didn't have a Brooks Brothers suit on?
Not at that point. I had a Pierre Cardin. That was before. Actually, yeah, no, I always had Brooks Brothers.
I'll never forget your stories with the Brooks Brothers suits.
Always Brooks Brothers suits. But at that point in time, maybe it was Brooks Brothers. Anyways, I put the bills inside my jacket. I got these bursting breasts with all these bills in it. And I look at it. I go, that's $3,000. I need $4,000.
Without looking? Well,
I looked at the bundles. And I didn't count them, but I looked at them.
What are you, Rain Man?
No.
Borderline?
So I go, excuse me, it's $4,000, not $3,000. The guy says, hey, turns around, opens up the safe, takes another wad out, hands it to me. I go, you want a receipt? And the guy says, no, you're Danny. You're from Peru. We don't get insurance. We send you to Peru in a box.
No.
So I walked out of there shaking. Got the guy his insurance. About a year and a half later, it burnt down. We paid a full loss.
Okay, that's why you get insurance, and that's why you're the
Yeah.
man. So you did your thing. So now you're working for the mafia, basically, because they're all calling you because you came through?
But I did some amazing things. I insured, besides Fisher Island, all the South Seacoast Towers, which were 5 buildings. That was an amazing contract. A lot of hotels. Most of the hotels on Ocean Drive were my clients. The city of Miami Beach, I was my client for many years. That was a big account. And so forth. So we did that.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel... Because you're still... You still kind of mingle and network somewhat, right? Not like... Not at the altitude that you were doing before, where you were, so involved in it. But do you feel that in today's society, with the way that everything has changed, mainly through COVID, right? Like I think a lot of our, the way that we. The way that we just operate on a daily basis with jobs, right? Like a lot of people are working more from home, and if they're required to go into an office, it's not on a daily basis. Now it's just 1 or 2 days a week. Do you feel that people are still networking to gather those types of referrals to gain the business, or is there another kind of avenue that you're foreseeing that's happening?
So this is my observation as an older guy. The cell phone and the computer have changed business completely. Everything is at your disposal. I would go to a cocktail party, and my philosophy for myself, the Port of Miami dinner, the roofers dinner, the hotels association dinner, the Kiwanis, whatever it was. My philosophy was, you go in, there's 1,000 people, 100 people, 200 people. My philosophy was, if you can pick up one account, it was worth whatever you spent on the dinner. Realestate Association, I would go to all the dinners. My philosophy was, if you pick up one account, it was worth it. It was worth whatever it was. But you would go and give out business cards all the time. Now
people don't even have business cards anymore.
It's about cell phones. It's about
your
Facebook,
cell phone is your business card, right?
Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, which I don't do.
Social media.
I have it, but I don't do it. But in my time, it was a business card and talking to someone. And
But I think that there was something
it was more
important.
personal.
It was that personal one-to-one, which does not exist anymore. It does not exist anymore. You're talking to a machine. You're talking to somebody, in another country where you're not even able to understand when you're communicating.
I mean,
and that kind of like personal one-to-one connection that we require, I think, as human beings, no longer exists, and that's why I think society is crumbling right before our very eyes at this point.
Think about it. I would give out 100 business cards and 2 cocktails. I would remember everybody's personal story, who they were married to, who they were sleeping with, how many buildings they had, what their income, where were they originally from.
Did you have a trick that you worked with?
My memory was extraordinary.
Well, it's still extraordinary with all the stories that you're sharing with the dates and the locations, but usually somebody has kind of like a little gimmick that they work with, like, oh, his head reminds me of, and he has a white shirt. My dad used to wear a white shirt, and his name is Danny. Like, there's always something like association that you work with. Was there something that you, other than just being intelligent?
When I was doing Latin American reinsurance, I remember meeting a guy in a taxi in Panama, seeing him again in London, and going, "Hi, John, good to see you."
No shit.
The last time we met, you had a gray tie and a dark suit. I said, "How the hell did you know?" That was in Panama. In such and such a date, he'd go, "Man, you're incredible."
That is incredible.
But I can't do that anymore. I remember how to tie my shoe. You get 2 little ears and wrap them together.
the bunny ears to tie the shoes.
I still do the bunny ears.
Danny, you still got it. Don't even go there. Okay, so walk us through then. You're landing amazing business. You're doing well. Your family's not living out of a shoebox anymore, right? You're financially on your way to the top, and you land the account that everybody's going after here in Miami, Fisher Island. How the hell did you do that?
Fisher Island, 1991.
Let's talk about how many employees you had working for you with the level of business and the revenue that was coming in.
5.
Thank you. Like, that alone speaks for itself, because you were a monster, and you had amazing women that were working with you.
Amazing women?
That were able to handle the load that was coming in and successfully help you grow the business, right? Because at that point, you weren't able to do it by yourself. It would have been impossible.
No, and one thing I would do for my staff every year is the Friday after Thanksgiving, I would send them shopping in New York. Give them a bunch of money, have them stay in hotels, have them been wined and dined and limos and whatever was necessary. I loved my staff. We're still in touch today, and I sold my company.
Do you still talk to them all today?
Oh, a lot. We talk a lot. We're going to have probably a dinner in the next month or 2, and we're just kind of like a team. But it was amazing. It was just amazing. Fisher Island, I get invited to bid on Fisher Island. And I go in for the first meeting on the ferry across.
So you get invited by whom?
By the manager of the property there.
Okay. Because at this point, obviously, now you have a name for yourself.
And I go in my MG midget.
Okay. Yeah.
With all the Rollses on the ferry. I go to the meeting, and the guy says,
that I've never been to Fisher Island?
Oh, it's amazing.
I've never been there. I've lived there and I've had opportunities where I've been invited, and I've never been on the ferry.
Only by ferry.
Only by ferry. I've never done. And I think a couple of my excuses was because I was like, oh, this is a mission. This is a mission to get over there.
I was on a ferry once with a Rolls Royce in the front of the ferry, and the guy had not put the brake on his Rolls Royce.
Fell in the water?
In the water.
Jeez. Yeah.
So I go to Fisher Island. I talk to the guy. Says you're permitted to put in a bid, but we want 2 brokers on the island, so you're not going to get the whole account. Okay. I put it together the best I could, and at that point in time there was a broker, names not necessary, who lived on Fisher Island, very upper class financial guy, very successful, and he had one part of the quote that I could not get. So they wouldn't give me an agent of record letter, and I couldn't get him to release that one part of the quote. And the guy said to me, look, if you include me on this account, I'll release this one part of the quote that you don't have. I thought about it. I went home that night. I didn't sleep more than 10 minutes. I paced all night. 2 children, my daughter was maybe 6, my son was 3, maybe 4, and I said, next morning I picked up the phone, I called the guy. I said, sir, I appreciate your offer, but I will try to do it on my own. I'll take my chances. And I hung up. That was maybe the longest night of my life. You have a chance to write maybe the biggest account, one of the largest accounts in Miami, not the biggest, but one of the biggest.
So let's preface a little bit for those that don't understand what Fisher Island is here in Miami.
Fisher Island is a place where Oprah Winfrey has an apartment, and Freddie Laker of the airlines, and a lot of movie stars. It's super, super upscale. An apartment that might be 10,000 square feet might cost $10 million. An apartment.
Even at during that time.
During that time was 10 million. Maybe now it's 20 million.
Right.
Super high class. The only way you can get there is by ferry. There's no roads to it. Everybody drives around in a golf course, but they have $200 million. They don't care, right? Or more. A lot of billionaires that are there. The downside is there is no road. You have to wait for the ferry.
Right. So at this point, whoever's living in there doesn't have to get to an office every morning, or if they do, it doesn't matter what time they get there.
They might come there and relax for a week or two, and so forth. Jimmy Connors, the tennis guy, had an apartment there as well. A lot of other
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise had an apartment, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of important people.
Right.
But anyway, I do the thing the best I can. I go out there, I present it. And I put down for the one quote I don't have, I can't get this quote. I actually put it down and said, unless you give me a letter to get it. And that's it. I'm done. I either get it or I don't.
Right.
I either have one of the 10 largest accounts in Miami-Dade County or I don't. And the guy called me up and he says, you got the account.
No shit.
I got the account, and it was amazing because that was 1991. In August of 1992, we had Hurricane Andrew. And it hit Fisher Island.
That's right. That is right.
And I had it insured. And we paid every claim that was presented to us.
So, for those that don't understand the insurance business, a natural catastrophe at that level, that was Andrew. It didn't, it hit the beach, but it was mainly south, right?
It was further south, but it did hit Fisher Island very hard.
So how does that affect an insurance company when you have to do those levels of payout for something of the magnitude of a Fisher Island and a Hurricane Andrew, which was a Category 5?
That's a very extraordinary question, and I'll tell you why. People think that they have a policy from Geico, from State Farm, from, Liberty Mutual, whatever. All these insurance companies have reinsurance. Insurance of insurance companies, which is what I did in London and in the Netherlands.
So you're insuring the insurance companies.
Right. And that happens 3 or 4 times, not one time.
It's amazing.
So that gets spread all over the world. And there's maybe 5 or 6 huge companies.
So it's basically a monopoly running the insurance companies.
It's kind of, no, not really. It's more like a bookie laying off a bet. He'll take a bet, he'll lay off part of the bet, and that other bookie will lay off part of the bet, and so forth and so on.
Interesting.
So that basically the front company doesn't retain more than X amount of the risk. And there's various different types of reinsurance. I'm not going to get that technical on you. Where, the front company ends up holding 20% of the risk or 30% of the risk. And it could be layered. It could not be layered or whatever. There's a lot of ways on that. But basically, the reason why companies with the proper reinsurance will not go broke. Companies with the improper reinsurance will go broke.
So at that point, a Fisher Island does their homework and understands that you are properly supported.
I had an A-rated company. Mm-hmm. The client does not see the reinsurance.
Okay.
But if the broker is smart enough, he'll ask the questions about the reinsurance. which most brokers will not because they don't know,
Okay.
right? But I could see how the reinsurance was placed. It was properly placed. We paid every dollar of the claim.
Amazing.
No lawsuits, no nothing. We paid whatever claims there were on Fisher. And of course, 100 other accounts too. I mean, that wasn't the only account I had.
Right.
So we paid all
Right,
the
because
losses.
if it was on the beach, you're like you had some damage that
we
that
had
was
a
coming
lot
in.
of we had a lot of losses, and we paid 99% of the losses. There was always one or two that had a question that went to litigation, but not as a general rule.
And what was the just now out of personal curiosity? So what was the bulk of the damages that occurred here in this area? Was it flooding mainly?
No.
Because of
In Miami, it was mostly a wind question. There are hurricanes that are flood questions, like what happened on the west coast of Florida about
Right.
a year and a half ago.
that did some serious damage over there.
And they would be flood questions. But flood is written by the federal government for the first portion of flood.
Okay.
You can get excess flood, but flood normally is a government program that gets renewed every couple of years. That's why people that have a house, like let's say on the outer banks of North Carolina, and a hurricane comes and wipes it out, the federal government's flood program builds them a new house every 10 years, or as long as that happens. But flood will become more and more of an issue because of what's going on in general with weather in the world.
Insurances, right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. As you're aware, probably in the southern part of Brazil in the last 2 weeks, they have more than 100 dead, and the floods have devastated the southern province near Rio Grande do Sul in the southern part of Brazil. Texas has just had a bunch of flooding as well, and wind. And you question yourself, how do these tornadoes in the Midwest get paid and so forth? Now, Florida, as an insurance, as insurance exists in Florida, homeowners have the highest rate of insurance in the country. A homeowner's policy might cost you between $8,000 and $12,000 a year easily for a nothing house. That's very high. So,
And why is that? Why is it so high in Florida, when you have areas like California that are being affected by earthquakes, for example, which
wind in Florida and earthquake in California are two very severe areas. So in California, a deductible for earthquake is huge.
Okay.
In Florida,
so it is that high as well.
it's huge deductibles, as in Florida, a deductible for windstorm is huge.
Okay.
One of the things I did along the way is I went to Japan, and I ended up representing a lot of the Japanese companies in Florida. And one day, I had a chance to insure a very large building in Miami-Dade County owned by the Japanese. I didn't get it the first year because they had a broker out of Los Angeles. And the underwriters in Japan felt that the building was in Los Angeles, so they reduced the wind deductible and raised the earthquake deductible. Exactly the opposite way. The next year, when they found out that windstorm is Florida, earthquake is California, I got that account and I held it for many years.
So,
it was wonderful working with the Japanese.
how long did you, just to backtrack a little bit here, we were in Fisher Island, so how long in total did you insure Fisher Island?
5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then a big broker came in. The last year that I had it, the largest broker in the world, with maybe 60,000 employees, came to compete against me, and they flew down from New York. I made my presentation, and they asked the brokers to leave the room. Remember, we were 6. They were 60,000.
I was gonna say, like, the comparison, right, between one and the other, and you're still winning the bids year after year after year.
We go outside, and the guy from this company who was representing the company says to me, "Your presentation was excellent." And I turned around to him, I remember, and I said, "And you know what? For $3 million, my company could be yours."
You're just trying to sell it at this point.
Well, I beat them. And then the next year they won. And another year and a half or 2 years later, I had an offer from a very large company in Chicago traded on the New York Stock Exchange. AJG is the symbol, 50 billion market cap, and I sold to them and worked for them for maybe a year and a half or 2 years. Didn't like the way they did things, and basically resigned and went to my farm in Costa Rica.
So how was that? How was that selling your very successful insurance company to a company that was bidding against you? Now you, as part of the contract,
They weren't bidding against me, different company.
Now, as part of the, now you're an employee for them, right? I mean, I know that it was
Correct.
part of your contract, that they keep you on board because they'd be stupid to lose you at that point because you're going to lose so much business because it's about the relationships that you've acquired throughout the years. So then what's that like for you at that point where now you are having to report to somebody?
It was very difficult. I pretty much ran my company in the way that I could compensate my employees to the max. I didn't
Did
have
the girls stay on board as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't have a corporate manual like, if you're
Right.
if you want contraceptives, we don't provide them, or if we're a Catholic company or whatever, or if you want to take vacation, you got to put it in writing in triplicate, and maternity leave is X or Y. My staff was my family. You're pregnant, you're going to have a child, go home, stay as long as you want. When you feel that you're ready to come back, come back. I'll pay you full salary all the time you're not here.
Yeah, but that is like you're one in a gazillion that does that, right? Like, who the hell operates like that anymore? Nobody. Like, no one does that,
I did.
And you have to be very proud of, and that's why you still have the relationship after so many years with these ladies, right? Because you were able to provide that for them, and it's that trust, and you were always there for them, right? So,
Yeah. And I would hire girls 16, 17 years old out of Miami High and train them, have them get full license in every field they could, and become superstars.
Right.
Of the people that work for me, I think still 2 or 3 are still in the insurance business with their own companies or employees or whatever. But, what goes around comes around. And if you're going to treat someone like crap, you're going to be treated like crap. And if you treat someone well, you're going to be treated
Correct.
well.
Correct.
So, so when I sold my company, I had some money, and I thought, someone said, Little Havana might happen. And I thought, well, let me go down and have a look.
So you're diving into the investments now. So that's
well, I had my farm in Costa Rica, which I bought in 1994.
And what did you pay for that?
That was a piece of land. I went down to Costa. Well, I went down to. That's a funny story too. I went to Costa Rica, basically because I was under a lot of stress, and my family would go to Europe for the summer. My ex-wife is Dutch. She would take the kids and go to her parents. So I needed a weekend off, and a guy says, why don't you go to Costa Rica and see what that's about? I go, well, I could go for a weekend. I book a flight Thursday down, back on Sunday. And I go down to Costa Rica. I remember it was the 28th of July. And I remember because that's the Independence Day for Peru. That's why I remember. 1994. And I get there Thursday night. I go out. I have a couple drinks, have some fun. I dance a little bit. And Friday I have a meeting with a banker, and the guy says, have you ever been river rafting? I said, no. He says, you really ought to go. When are you leaving? I go, I'm leaving in 2 days, Sunday. He goes, well, let my secretary reserve for you tomorrow, Saturday. You can go river rafting. I go, okay, how does that work? They'll pick you up at the hotel 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning. You go river rafting all day and you go back to your hotel. Okay. So a guy picks you up. I go river rafting. Amazing. Amazing to be river rafting in Costa Rica in the jungle. Oh, my God. And we get done with the river rafting, and they're serving you pineapple and papaya and nice fruit and some Coca-Cola and whatever. And I thought, wow, this is nice. And I look up from the river, and there's a bridge. I go, wow, what a beautiful bridge. I asked the guy, hey, Chico, what's that bridge about? Oye, ¿ese puente dónde es? The guy says, That's the old road from San Jose, the capital city where you're staying, to the Atlantic coast, a place called Limon. I go, wow. He says, yeah, that's the old road. People don't use it anymore. They go on the new road because there's a tunnel through the mountain. Oh, okay. I go back to San Jose, capital of Costa Rica, cancel my Sunday flight, pick up my weekend bag. That was Saturday. Cancel my flight, walk to the bus station the next morning and go, I need a bus on the old road to Limon. The guy says, you got to change buses 3 times. I go, let's do it, baby. I get on the bus with my Walkman.
That sounds like some Romancing the Stone movie type.
All the people with their chickens on their laps.
Yeah.
And the bus goes San Jose to Cartago, first stop. You switch buses. Then you go to Rialba, second stop, change buses. Then you go to Siqueires, you change buses again. And then you get to Limon. It was like a 7-hour ride through the countryside. I got my Walkman on. I'm not feeling any pain. It's pretty cool. I get to Limon Sunday afternoon. It was the 31st of July. I get out of the bus in the middle of Limon, Center Parks, church, park, typical Latin American layout. And a taxi drives up. And he says to me in Spanish, ¿Qué se le ofrece, varón? It's like, what do you need, man? In Spanish. And I go, well, I want to go look at the ocean. The guy says, hop in. I go, but you have 2 passengers. No, they're my girlfriends. Hop in. I hop in. The guy takes me to the coast, and it was a terribly disappointed. It was like dirty and gray sand, and the guy took me to the port. I go, don't you guys have any neat beaches? He goes down the coast a bit. I go, oh, okay. I go, don't you guys have like any music at night and whatever? He says, yeah, I'll pick you up in a couple hours. Take a shower. So I take a shower. The guy picks me up. We go to a place, I remember, on the coast. And I'm expecting like merengue, salsa. And they start playing like reggae.
Really?
Because they speak English on the Atlantic coast of all of Central America. I remember they brought out a green lemon with rum. And they cut the lemon in half. And it was orange inside. I'd never seen a green lemon.
Never.
There was orange inside. Limón naranja, they call it. I go, holy shit. They just cut a lemon that was green, dark green, and it's orange inside.
That's interesting.
Listen to
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, me neither. Had never heard of that.
Okay, how does it taste?
Well, it's like a lemon. It's a lemon.
Same shit.
Yeah.
Different color.
Put it in the rum, a couple pieces of ice, you're drinking, you're dancing a little bit, the music's kind of funky. And I tell the driver, I go, you know, I'd like to cross the entire country and go to Nicaragua on the Pacific coast. Remember, we're on the Atlantic coast. Mm-hmm. That guy says, you're talking, that's like a few days drive.
Yeah.
I go, yeah. I go, can you do it? The guy says, well, guy's 22 years old. He goes, I don't know. You know what? Let me talk to my boss and get the newer car. Takes me back to my hotel, which was $5, and I shared my bed with 8 roaches.
That's appealing.
You walk into the hotel, they check you for guns.
Okay.
It was that bad. You got to go through a metal detector to get to your hotel room, okay?
Now, are you carrying at any point?
No, I'm carrying my weekend bag.
Your balls is what you're carrying at that point.
I sleep all night. The guy calls me up the next morning, picks me up, and says, let's go. So we drive to the first city. And late in the afternoon, I remember that the guy's house, to have running water, he would have like a mountain stream flow through the house and then out. That was his running water.
Amazing.
And it was really elevated, and that was because it was rainy season, and the rain would be pretty high. Anyway, the guy picks me up. We drive to the first town. And I got a lot of money, right? I'm like a rich old guy, whatever, to him. And we go to a bar, and the guy orders a bottle of Johnny Walker Black, which I don't even know what it costs. Man, $30, $40, whatever. But this guy, makes $30 a month.
Right. That for him was like...
So I do something. I come back and I see the guy on the second floor, like drinking and like, being real important. Anyway, as it turns out, the guy finishes a bottle of Johnny Walker Black. And he's so drunk the next day that I end up driving the taxi.
How funny. You're the one taking over at this point. The guy's
He's
super
puking
hungover.
out the passenger side, and I'm driving the taxi. We go to the next city. I make some notes. I look at altitude. I look at geography, latitude, longitude. I'm very anal for that kind of stuff. And I make some notes, and I go, I'd like to have a piece of land here or a house or something. I'll come back later. And we drive to pretty close to the Nicaraguan coast. The guy leaves me there.
So how many days was it in
That
total?
was like 3 days or
Okay.
so. We get there, and for this guy to go from Limon to Liberia was like for you to go from Miami to Argentina, you know. He had never been out of Limon. We get to Liberia, I pay him, I go to the coast, and the beach is absolutely gorgeous. Flamingo is the name of the place. I walk into the hotel, I go, yeah, I'd like to have a room. They give me a room. I come back down, I go, I don't want that room. I want the room on the end. They go, yeah, but that's for a family of 8. I go, I'll pay for a family of 8. It's got the view of the ocean, setting sun at the end of the day. I get that room, beautiful view. And I'd get up in the morning, I'd swim the whole bay. I was a swimmer in high school, as you know. I swim the whole bay, I'd run back. It was great, a few days. And then it was time to come back to reality. So I go to the hotel desk. I go, look, I need a driver. Oh, one night we went into Liberia, and they're playing the marimba. And I asked the guy if I could play. So I'm playing the marimba, and the gringos are thinking, look at this guy play the marimba. He's a local guy.
Right.
That was pretty funny. Anyway, I tell the guy I want to go back to San Jose. He says, well, you have to go. We can call for an airplane. You have to go to the airport. Okay. All right, fine. I pay the guy whatever it is. The guy drives me in a van to the airport. The airport at that point in time was a soccer field. One building the size of an outhouse. I mean, tiny, like one of those portable toilets, and a soccer field.
That's crazy.
The guy lands in the plane. He's got his stripes of captain. It's a 2-motor plane, 2-engine plane. And the guy takes out a list, opens up the back door, and he says, passengers for today, pasajeros de hoy, Danny Vaisman. I go, that's me. He says, please. I look around.
That's it?
No one's around.
The only one?
No one. So I go, usted es el capitán, el piloto. Sí, señor. ¿Le importa si me siento adelante? Do you mind if I
So
sit
you're
in the front
of
with
the plane
you
at this point?
and fly it with you?
You're the co-pilot.
The guy says, no problem. Put on these headphones. I get in the front of the plane and we fly. And I remember, which came in handy many years later, I would go, Chico, what's that beach? He goes, let's have a look at it. Yeah, we'd go down. That's so-and-so beach by Juco. And you come back up again. Anyways, we get to Samaná. We pick up a French family with a baby, and we end up in San Jose. I stay in San Jose another day or two, and I fly back to Miami. But I had made
So how long were you there in total then? For like a week?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I made enough notes, maybe 8 days, that I knew where I wanted to buy a piece of land. So I call up my friend. I go, look, I'm coming in Thanksgiving with the purpose of buying a piece of land or a house in Costa Rica. This is my budget. I want to be between this town, and this town, blah, 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 at this altitude, so forth. I get to Costa Rica in Thanksgiving.
So at this point, your buddy over there is the one that puts you in contact with
A realtor.
the realtor over there that's going to help you.
It was a woman, and she takes me up to one piece of land. I didn't like it. To another one, I liked it almost, but I didn't like it. And she takes me to a piece of land, which is in the top of the mountain, 6,500 feet, 2,000 meters high, really high, higher than Denver. And I get out of the car, I look at it, and I'm looking for 1 to 2 acres. 2 acres is 60,000 feet, más o menos.
Mm-hmm.
1 acre is 43,000. 2 acres, an acre and a half is 60,000 feet. So I ask them, they go, this is 60,000, blah, blah, blah. I go, perfect. I go back to the city and put in a bid, and I get it. They take me to the mountain, and they go, you have to come back in January to close. But you can look at the land now. No, I'll come back in January. I go back in January.
So you buy this land, and you
I
haven't even.
I put a deposit.
Okay,
on
and
it.
you haven't even seen it at this point.
I saw it. I looked at it. I drove up, looked at it.
When you.
But I couldn't look at it because they had a gate, so I didn't really see it. Come back in January. I close on it. I go up there to look at it, and these guys are waiting with a horse for me. And I go, they're in horses. I go, what are you doing with the horses? This is 60,000 feet. It's an acre and a half. No, senor. You bought 60,000 meters. You bought the whole mountain.
No shit.
Oh, okay. Amazing. So I buy this 15-acre farm with no structures on it. And it was 1994, 1995-ish. And I started building in 1996. And I built 3 houses and a barn and blah, 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 and everything else. And that was my farm for 25 years. COVID broke out in March of 2020, and I sold the farm in May of 2020.
Okay.
Haven't been back to Costa Rica since. I do miss it like hell, but beautiful farm. View of the Pacific Ocean at 120 miles. It was the top of the mountain. It was amazing. So I had 25 great years there. So I came back to Miami, resigned from the insurance company that had bought me out, and went to Costa Rica for 10 years. Vacation.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I formed a high-tech company called Haiku Tech.
I remember. Oh,
Remember
that's
that?
right. I remember that
With
one.
Roderick?
Yeah.
So Haiku Tech, as it turns out, was my company, and I sold it also to Roderick, who's now president of Haiku Tech, which is a multi-million-dollar company.
Really?
So I sold it too early.
Hey, you snooze, you lose.
Everything I've done in my life has been too early. My house on Palm Island too early. My property on Miami Beach too early. My buildings in Little Havana too early.
Well, you've always been that visionary, right? Like everybody's kind of like at your coattail all the time. What's Danny doing? And then you kind of jump ship because you're ready for the next move. But you're right. Yeah, people have become very rich based off of your moves, and a lot of it was in real estate.
And I remember you and I were at a dinner 24 years ago, with Gregor from the Netherlands and Bill Cutler, and you said to me, they're all going to get rich because of you.
I think that I remember that dinner. It was on the beach at the Astor.
No, that was with Bruce Jones from Bermuda.
Oh, was
with a wine.
Oh shit, that was hilarious. I'm like this 20-year-old punk, and we're sitting there, we're having dinner with all of these very intimidating men, and I like yo no pinto nada ahí, right, at all. I'm just like a pretty face there. And, I'm kind of in my own little head and my own little world. And, the conversation, as much as I wanted to get into it, I was lost, right? It was a lot of financial talk and very interesting. But at one point, they're just ordering wine and I'm not paying attention. And you just kick me under the table and you're like, pay attention. The guy orders like a $1,500 bottle of Merlot, no sé qué cosa, whatever. And I was like, what? Who does this? Yeah, that was the experience that I had around your friends when, whenever I would meet them and have that opportunity. It was definitely a different world that I wasn't accustomed to.
That was fun, though. We had fun.
Yeah. So you start, so you do your first major investment, I guess, in real estate, which was your farm, your mountain in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I had bought a house for my family.
So your first investment then, with your success on the beach, was your house then in, because I know that you
Fairgreen
had
Drive. That was an amazing thing in the sense that those 4 days, in November of 1987, remember, I had been living in this house on Alton Road, which was my grandfather's house, blah, 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 that had been left in a trust for us, whatever. But I wanted my own house for my family. So November 2nd, my son was born, 1987. November 3rd, my mother-in-law came. And November 4th, I closed on the house on Fairgreen Drive, which was an amazing house. And that's a house that my family grew up in.
Okay.
Even after the divorce, I paid everything and I left that house paid for my ex-wife. I then bought the neighbor's house.
Right, because then within the same block, you did a couple of moves there.
Yeah, I bought the neighbor's house, and then after the divorce, I bought another house.
Right.
Because I didn't want to leave. The divorce affected me a lot. Anyway.
So, just to put cost into perspective, then with the real estate, in what year was it? 90, when you bought the house, when you bought your first family home.
1987.
So 87. What was
the house cost $115,000,
and it was how many bedrooms and how many bathrooms?
4-3, and my ex-wife sold it for $1.5 million, and it's now worth $2.5 million.
Right, and because she sold it a couple of years ago. Right.
Yeah. So now it's worth. Maybe she sold it 7 years ago, and now it's worth $2.5 million.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy what's happening, especially on the beach. Well, I think it's overall, but the beach is just out of control.
So I had bought this very small house, thinking it would be a good investment on Palm Island.
Right.
On the water. It didn't have a dock. It was in terrible condition, but I, put a lot of money into it, in the sense that I put in central air, blah blah blah. And I built a dock. That was really the
concrete dock.
The only concrete dock on that side of the island. There was one on the other side. And that's where, for example, Nikki's on South Beach. Nikki's on South Beach. The parents lived on that island. Nikki was a daughter of the guy who died in a car accident, tragically, 30 years ago, maybe. Okay. Like on a high school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Type of thing.
Nikki Beach.
Penrod's, yeah.
Yeah.
Penrod.
It's still there, right?
But Jack Penrod is the guy that originally made Nikki Beach, and Nikki was after his daughter Nicole that died in a car accident, tragically, maybe 30 years ago. Horrible. 18 years old, high school, prom type of thing, and died. Anyway, he had an airplane in his backyard on Palm Island, a seaplane that he could slide off and fly to the Bahamas. It's like, it was amazing. Just amazing. And that island was a little bit underpriced. I bought this house. I built a concrete dock. I sold it 10 years later for what I felt was an incredibly gain.
What did you buy it for?
I bought it for $358,000. I sold it for $1,400,000-ish, and it's now worth $12 million.
Danny!
Yeah, well, you can't win them all. But then I started buying all these buildings in Little Havana.
Like your next door neighbor was, Al Capone.
On the other side of the island. 93 Palm Island was Al Capone's house.
Great little area. It really was. It was
really
just
nice.
like you would drive in there, and you were just in another world, right? It just had a different vibe.
But to go to the supermarket was 2 hours because of traffic on 395.
Yeah.
It was like, what I like about Little Havana is you could walk everywhere. There's a market. There's 4 restaurants. There's a place to listen to music.
Sí, porque a ti te gusta la chumería. Because this is out of control. So I'm here at his house, in his apartment, and it took me an hour to get here in horrendous traffic on a Saturday afternoon, which is like, what the hell? What are people doing out, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? The parking, so many people outside, and that reminded me, this is why I am antisocial and I don't leave unless I have to. But it's just so overwhelming. So we're here in Little Havana right now in his apartment, which you were always big in his penthouse on the 12th floor. Fifth floor. Why do I keep saying 12th floor? Because your apartment. Yeah. Nobody knows the building that you're on. So you've always spoken about Little Havana and the potential that this area has because of the closeness to the beach and to Brickell and,
I can walk to Brickell. I can walk to Key Biscayne.
Mm-hmm. Vizcaya is right
Vizcaya,
there,
right there.
and
Coral Gables is not far.
right. So
Coconut Grove.
You've always been a visionary in that perspective, where you've been able to see what others cannot. Right, which makes you kind of like that visionary, and a lot of people have always kind of seen what direction you're headed in. In your youth and just with your experience in the business of insurance. So you saw it, you're living here now, you did your first investment where you purchased an apartment building.
A warehouse.
It was a warehouse here? That was
First
your first
one was
one?
a warehouse,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, yes, now I
Then
remember.
was an
That's right.
apartment building.
That's right.
The warehouse.
But the warehouse you did it on your own. Then
Yeah.
the apartment building you did that with partners.
With partners. Mm-hmm. Which I don't like owning apartment buildings. I like commercial property. Then I did 4 more commercial buildings.
Because it was like a mission. You had to rent the units, and it's...
Well, and you got to collect the rent, and they won't pay you, and then you got to evict them, and it's like, I'm not a lawyer. I got to hire a lawyer to evict them.
Did you have a lot of that because of the area, and it was so early on before this boom? Because, now it's a little classier, I guess, if you want to say that, because of all the tourism that's happening here right now.
Well,
but when you started investing here, that's not what we were talking about. It was still...
But one of the things I liked about it is because of the altitude, which is no altitude, but enough to put it in a non-flood zone.
Okay. Now you're talking you saw that
Right.
from that cost perspective because of the insurance that you're having to
And
pay.
if we flood, which Brickell Avenue does flood, Little Havana does not.
Now, does that play into effect with the insurances that you had to pay with
You
your
don't have
purchases?
to get flood insurance.
Okay.
You're in Zone X, and that's a requirement that's not required with a mortgage.
And is that a really big savings?
It was not a big savings, but it was a savings. Now it's going to become a big savings.
Right.
Because they changed the flood maps and da-da-da-da-da, the whole thing. But it was a consideration. And, we're 20 feet above sea level, which is not a lot.
No.
But the coast is 5 feet above sea level. Brickell Avenue is underwater with any storm, or a lot of rain. But I also thought, what a well-located area. So I bought a couple buildings with partners, a couple without partners, sold them all, pretty much. Kept one building, the bakery building, which I really liked, and I lived on top of the bakery.
I remember.
Which I probably would have stayed, except I got such a good offer for it that I sold it. And that bakery is full every day. It's full to the gills
I
every
was
day.
really surprised, and I haven't been here in a while. I'm not working in this area as much anymore. But the amount of people, the amount of tourism just driving to your apartment.
Yeah, a lot of tourists here.
Crazy.
And we have the ball and chain.
This looks
we
like...
have Party Cake Bakery.
Everything was packed.
We have,
Everybody's having
churros.
beers and eating and playing dominoes. And it's really extraordinary what's happening
in this area.
In this area right now,
Like, if I have a lunch at the Capitol Grill, I can walk from here.
Right. You're
July, you don't walk. It's hot as hell. But April, you walk. Mm-hmm. March, you walk. It's a beautiful walk. It's 2 miles. To go to Key Biscayne, the entrance to Key Biscayne is 1.5 miles. You can walk it, but you can bike it. I bike a lot.
Yeah, I saw your bikes there in the entrance. Well, good. Stay active. I mean, that's the only way to go. So now you're... I mean, do you want to get into this?
I got one day 6 years ago, almost to the day, I was walking to go get a cup of coffee, and a woman stops me and says, "Danny, what are you doing?" I go, "Well, one dark and rainy morning." It always starts that way.
Yeah. I don't know.
What are you doing? I go, "I'm going to go get a cup of coffee." She goes, "Well, you speak 4 languages. You live in Little Havana. We need a tour guide. And you are it. You know everybody." So I got hired as a tour guide 6 years ago. Other than the COVID year, basically March of 2020 through April of 2021, I do this every day.
Every day you're working?
Every day when I get
for
called.
a couple of hours.
I
I mean, you're walking there, right? Like you're right there.
Right. And once in a while I get called by a bigger company out of New York. Like the other day I had 50 people on a tour for this company out of New York, and I did the bus, and I did Wynwood, and I did Little Havana.
Okay, so give us a little sample of Danny Vaisman as a tour guide in Little Havana.
Danny Vaisman talks about the history of Little Havana and how, Little Havana, before it became Little Havana, was predominantly Greek and Jewish. Large Greek church called Saint Sophia on Coral Way.
Yes.
Large Jewish synagogue called
Right by
Beth
Tutto
David.
Pasta.
By Tutto Pasta.
Is that still around?
Yes, they're both around. Tutto Pasta and Tutto Pizza, both. And large Jewish synagogue called Beth David, who'd been there forever. And then, in 1959, Fidel Castro marches into Havana, January of 1959, overthrows Fulgencio Batista, who was a dictator in the 1950s, and starts expropriating everything that is American. Exxon Oil, Chase Manhattan Banks, Coca-Cola, American International Group of Insurance Companies, takes them all over. Most of the hotels, most of the casinos. The Cubans that had some money look at each other and go, wow, this is not what we expected. They buy an airplane ticket, they come to Miami. The second group were intellectuals that thought, wow, different than what we thought it would be. Buy an airplane ticket, come to Miami. There was a third group of individuals in that first wave of Cubans between 1959 and 1965. And they were people from Barcelona, Spain. And you would ask yourself, what are people from Barcelona, Spain doing coming from Cuba to Miami between 1959 and 1965? And the answer is the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939, pitted the Republicans from the Barcelona area, backed by the Soviet Union, against Franco nationalists, backed by Fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. Franco nationalists win the Spanish Civil War, and the Republicans from the Barcelona area pick up their things and migrate primarily to three countries in Latin America: Dominican Republic, Cuba, and Mexico. Fast forward 20 years from 1939 to 1959, Castro takes over, and these individuals come to Miami. So my mother in Peru, American, comes into our room and goes, "Hi, kids." And we go, "Hi, Mom." And Mom says, "Kids, if this happened in Cuba, it can happen in Peru.
That's right.
Pack your bags. We're going to Grandma's house in Miami." So I got here in 1959. I spent the next 6 years translating for every Cuban who couldn't speak English and every American who couldn't speak Spanish. We were fully bilingual. We spoke Spanish in the streets of Peru and English at home.
So you were busy.
Busy.
That's great. So your tour buses are filled with the most amount of people, I would imagine.
Tour buses once in a while.
Oh,
most
you walk.
Most of the time it's walking.
It's walking tours. Oh, God, that's got to be vicious in this heat in the summer.
Well, I put on a long sleeve shirt not to get my arms burnt, skin cancer and all that.
Okay. And so you're doing it every single day? Is it mainly in the morning when all these tourists are...
Middle of the day. If I get called, I'll do it.
So they call you when they have a big group and, Danny, come over here.
Like, for example, today I had a group. Very small group. A lady from Southern California and another lady from Washington, D.C.
So what are the people that you're seeing, the tourists that are getting on these
Not
tours
buses,
here?
On the tours.
On the tours. These
everywhere.
Everywhere. So what parts of the world?
Mozambique, Lithuania, Latvia.
Amazing.
Germany, Colombia, Argentina, Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium, England, and then foreign countries also, like New York, Illinois, California, Oregon, Washington State, which all those people are moving here. Miami has grown by 40%.
It's crazy.
In the last 5 years.
And the infrastructure, that's the problem, because the infrastructure is not here.
No. So
it's impossible to drive and be able to commute at this point in Miami, unless they start building, public transportation that actually works, which they're trying to do that.
They're trying very hard. I like Little Havana.
But it's not going to happen anytime soon at the rate that they're doing
living here because you can walk everywhere. I have a car. I put 500 miles on the car religiously every year.
Yeah, but it's also because you work close where you live. You're walking to go to nice restaurants because you're so close to everything.
Right.
Not everybody has that advantage having to work and visit different clients. If you were in a position where you're having to network the way that you were doing it many years ago, we're having a very different conversation.
I would have to go to the different cocktails in the different places with a tie and jacket, although tie and jackets are a little bit out now.
Eso ya no se da. Eso ya no se da.
I didn't have one day in my working life that I didn't go to work with my Brooks Brothers suit and one of my great ties.
Can I tell you that now when you go into any type of meeting where anybody's actually wearing a formal suit, you're completely out of place.
Right.
You're making people uncomfortable. And I'm 47 years old and I work with millennials and what are they, Gen X? No, Gen Z. Gen Z. I always get them confused. I'm Gen X. And their mentality. I think that I'm so young and I'm so hip. You start talking to them and I realize how drastically everything is changing and how fast everything is changing. And now with AI, that technology that's going to speed everything up at another pace. I don't even want to understand what's going to happen within the next 5 years.
Very different.
Very different. Okay, Danny. So this was great information and historical knowledge that you have with Miami. So let's leave this with if you had to offer. Let's go back to insurance. If you had to offer insurance knowledge and advice to, for example, Monica, that's going to be purchasing a home in Miami Beach, what would be and real estate, right? Because it's all combined, right? It's all together. So what would be intelligent advice that you can offer somebody with the growth, with the way that insurance and taxes are out of control as well? So yeah, you're purchasing this inflated value of a home at this point, which sometimes I think that you might be better off doing that because rents are out of control, and unless they start putting a cap on that. So what's the move? So what's the move?
Cap on rents is a disaster. Ain't gonna work.
So what's the move? Do you rent?
Well,
do you buy?
Why would I advise a 47-year-old, very intelligent, very well-versed woman who's my friend? First thing I would say is you need life insurance.
Done.
Although that sounds like a stupid thing to do,
no.
You need life insurance, and you need kind of a universal life where the premiums are there, but they're flexible. One, you're saving money. Two, if something happens to your child or your niece or your mother or whoever you have to look after, will be taken care of. You don't expect that. You look at it more for the savings. And on the life insurance policy, I would make no mistake about it, a long-term care rider. No mistake about it. So a life insurance policy, universal life, with a long-term care rider. That I would do. Regarding the property of the house, I would take a super high deductible for wind, because a roof is a lot of money, and whatever your roof is going to cost you, the policy's not going to cover it anyway.
Right.
So you get enough to satisfy your mortgage company. Because remember, the mortgage company doesn't care about the inside of the house.
Right.
They have a mortgage. If your thing burns to the ground, they want to get paid. That's all they care about. As far as mortgage rates, obviously very difficult, but you might even consider a variable interest rate mortgage for a few years.
You think that's wise?
Well, to see if rates go down, because...
Well, they have to go down, you don't think?
They don't have to go down, but they can go down.
But they have to go down to control the inflation that's so out of control right now.
They don't have to go down. They don't have to go down.
I can't imagine
if you got lucky enough to buy a house in 2020, 2021, when rates were 2.75...
Right. That you were refinancing.
But think about that. You got a 30-year loan at 2.75. You're never going to sell that house or pay off that mortgage. Never. You're never going to pay that mortgage off. Because for rates to be 2.75 or 3%, again, it might happen. We might go into like a tank of whatever's going on, but we don't know. And the thing about real estate in general, people go, I'm going to buy a house as an investment. The truth of the matter is it's not an investment. You buy a house because you have a family that needs a house. If you don't have a family that needs a house, you don't have a house. It's not It's not an investment. And a lot of the big money market funds in New York are buying all the private homes now.
Right. So they're not even giving you an opportunity to.
No.
They're coming in and
If
they're just
they're
like
coming in cash. They don't care if they have insurance or not. One of the classics one would be Blackstone. They have more real estate than anybody else.
They're one of the main
buying
ones.
single family homes. Do you think they need financing? They don't need financing.
Right.
They come in cash offer. They don't care. They don't have to comply. Blah 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 blah. So the house that my grandfather bought on Alton Road for $29,000 in 1959, 1960. The property taxes I looked the other day are $23,000, and the insurance is another $13,000. So they're paying more between insurance and property taxes than my grandfather bought the house for.
Yeah.
60 years ago, whatever. I'm going to say one more thing. I work for different companies regarding the tours. The company, if you want to go on a tour, look it up online. It's called FoodtoursinMiami.com.
Okay.
And
we'll put that now on the bottom so that everybody can follow.
FoodtoursinMiami.com, and you can ask. We want Danny to be our guide.
Yes. Everybody, tune in. Do they have to make reservations? How does that work?
They have to go through that
right?
website, make the reservation. It's not my company. I'm a hired hand. But you can say, we want Danny to be our guide. And I will say, I have Venmo for people that don't carry cash and want a tip. Venmo works great.
Is that a common catastrophe that you're finding that?
Well, I make the announcement at the beginning of the tours. 2 announcements. The first one is, this is not a political tour. I make that announcement because I don't want, the guy that likes Trump to beat up the guy that likes Biden, so I don't get into that.
Right. Smart.
Political
that's
tour.
pretty much that's pretty much everyday life now today, right?
And the second announcement I make is I have Venmo. And the reason I say that is because my kids told me to say, Dad, if you're going to do this, tell me I have Venmo. So if they want to tip you, they know that because no one carries cash anymore.
It's true. Nobody carries cash. That's a
Younger
great point.
generation has no cash. People my age wouldn't think
They're
of going out of the house without
their
cash.
credit card is their phone now. Beep.
I know.
I'm not even there yet, but I will be. Okay, Danny. Well, thank you for, sharing your time with me this afternoon. I really appreciate, all of your knowledge. And we've been meaning to do this for a pretty long time, and we just haven't gotten around to it today. Today, the universe just conspired with us, and we were able to do it. But yeah, please, tune in. We're going to put the website again, which is, say it one more time for your tour.
FoodtoursinMiami.com.
Okay, we're going to put that right in the bottom so you guys can go and make your reservation with Danny Vaisman for his amazing tours in Miami. You going to Brickell too, or how does that work?
Pretty much Little Havana.
It's Little Havana. That's where you're.
Well, the company will do South Beach as well.
Do you do that?
No, I do only Little Havana.
Little Havana. And it's okay. All right.
It's enough for me.
That's good.
I work 4 hours a day, 3 hours a day. That's fine.
That's
and
living the life, living the dream.
And I make sure everybody has a great time, and I take them to great food, Cuban sandwiches, pastelito,
and they're having, so that's part of the tour.
That's part of the tour. Yeah. It's all included. Empanadas.
There you go.
Churros.
Qué rico. Cafecito.
Qué rico.
Cafecito. Cafecito cubano. That's gotta be one of them also. But okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your support by subscribing to our channel. And, leave some comments if you have any questions for Danny. If you write them in the comment section, I'll definitely share them with him, and we'll get you some answers for that. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting. I really appreciate everything that you do. Love you. Bye.